and a warm welcome to our Data Science Berlin Meetup. We are meeting today in a hybrid format. So some of our guests are attending physically at BASECAMP in Berlin, and many more are attending online through BASECAMP on Air, our virtual space, for the debate about digital life and work. I'm Iris, sitting in our office in Munich, and I run public relations at Telefónica in Germany, and I'm responsible for our activities here in BASECAMP. So the corona pandemic has shown us the importance of digital communication and e-learning. Not only schools, but also companies had to learn, I would say, practically overnight, how to use digital tools to transfer knowledge and to organize education. So the pandemic opened our eyes not only to the great possibilities of e-learning, but also, and I think especially here in Germany, to our limits in using digital tools. Achim Berg, the president of the digital association Bitkom, he said that the corona crisis uncovered that we are not a leader in digital education, but that we are trailing. So at the same time, lifelong learning is becoming ever more important, especially in the work sphere. Therefore, I'm very pleased about the topic of our meetup today, a corporate look at educational data science. In the next hour, we will learn, firstly, how companies can use data science for further education of their employees. Secondly, what are the possibilities if companies want to tap into the skills of their talents and employees? Then what tools are available? And last but not least, what are the benefits for the companies, but also for the employees? Our partner of the meetup today is StackFuel. StackFuel is a Berlin-based startup, the first Germany startup provider of data science trainings for companies. So StackFuel enables workplaces to develop in-house talent with first-class training in high-demand data science skills. We as Telefónica Germany are not only investing through our innovation hub Wyra in StackFuel, but we are also using their technology to train our own employees. You will hear about it later in our program. Because we, Telefónica Germany, believe that lifelong learning is a cornerstone of success in today's changing business world. I would say we have a very important topic today, combined with newest technology in data science, and of course, very inspiring guests and speakers. Our moderators this afternoon are Maike and Isabel. So hello from Munich, dear Maike, Isabel. They are from StackFuel, and they will lead you now through our program and introduce you to our guests. From my side, again, a very big welcome, and Maike and Isabel, the stage is now yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris, and a warm welcome from us as well. My name is Maike, and this is my colleague Isabel, and we will be guiding you through this meetup today. As Iris mentioned, we at StackFuel provide online trainings in the field of data analytics and data science for corporates as well as individuals. Our trainings are 100% online, industry-specific, and include a mentoring program. For those of you who have not been to one of our meetups before, we organize these events or meetups on a regular basis to exchange thoughts on data science topics. We have different topics every time, and today the topic is, as Iris already mentioned, educational data science in corporate with a corporate look. Also, at every meetup, we have a giveaway of one of our data analyst trainings. The winner of today's event will be announced after the second talk. We are very happy to be able to host this hybrid event together with our two partners, Telefónica and the German the German Innovation Center for Industry 4.0 from Regensburg. We will hear more from Philipp about the Innovation Center later, but now I'll hand over to my colleague Isabel, who will introduce you to Christian and Laura.
Thanks, Maike, and also a really warm welcome from my side. So I have the honor to introduce the first two speakers to you today. First of all, Laura is our special guest. She's a senior data scientist at Telefónica, and she will share with us the insights of her job role as a data scientist and give us some very interesting learnings on her day-to-day work. And the second speaker for the first talk is Christian, who is the head of talent at Telefónica. He will share with us a very interesting project which is called Beyond, an HR project about data science education that we're also very proud to have collaborated with Telefónica and Weira with. And he will present to you the different and exciting learning journeys that Telefónica has within this project. At the end of the talk, we will also have a Q&A session. So if you want to ask Laura or Christian any questions, you can already post them in the chat while they're asking, and we will ask them after the talk is finished. And yeah, without further ado, I'd like to introduce and give the speech to Laura and Christian to share their insights with you.
Okay, hi everybody, and thanks Isabel and Maike for the nice introduction. Yes, I'm Laura. I'm Laura Velikonja. I'm a mathematician and working as a senior data scientist at Telefónica. And I feel very happy today because I have the opportunity to give you an insight into what it means to do corporate data science. So let me explain how we work. First of all, I work in the Department Data Analytics and Artificial Intelligence, which is part of a larger organizational structure called DDC, which stands for Digital and Data Competence Center. So we all employees who do nothing else than working with data. So there's one team, for example, which acquires, sources new data, and then there's another team who does reports on relevant KPIs. And then there are people like me, data scientists, who try to use data science to acquire information which is not directly there or directly obvious within the data. So we all do have one thing in common, and that's we work for our business unit. So we can be seen actually as a data service unit within Telefónica. So you see, we have centrally organized our data department. And yeah, our goal is actually to help our colleagues from the different units such as marketing, HR, or network technologies to make better decisions more quickly. So this is our goal, this is our purpose. So this was very high level now. So you might ask, so what is it that I actually do as a data scientist? Basically, it's all about answering questions. Questions, like I said before, which are not directly obvious within the data. Questions also sometimes about the future, so we do predictive questions or question answering. And all those questions have in common that you need some kind of algorithm to extract information which helps you to give an answer. And I brought you 3 examples to make it more clear. So the first question which we answer in our team is for our online department. They have asked us, or they constantly ask, is our O2 website broken? Very important question, because if it's broken, customers cannot buy anything, so we're losing directly lots of euros. Another question we answer is for our network technology department. Is a change which they are planning probably causing a network failure? Will it cause a network failure? So also this is a very important question. As you know, currently we do lots of modification within our network for 5G, and of course mistakes can happen. And of course we don't want failures of mistakes to happen because it's bad for our customer experience. And then there are, of course, lots of questions which are directed to our customers themselves. One of them, for example, is does customer, for example, Iris, does she get the data volume she actually bought in her tariff? So for a lot of people this might seem an easy question, and for them a mobile network just works, but actually it has a very, very complex architecture with a lot of systems which transport information between each others, and of course also their mistakes can happen, and we try to detect them as soon as possible with the help of data science. And now I have something to think for you. Maybe you have noticed one thing all those three questions have in common. So, of course, they have lots of things in common, like we try to solve them or answer them analytically, and they are telco specific, but there's another thing which they all three share. So, those questions will be asked over and over again. So, not once, but actually every second we want to know if our O2 website is working correctly. And every hour, maybe every day, we want to know if a newly planned change within our network will cause a failure. So those are all questions which are asked on a constant level. And that's one thing, actually, which we developed within the last years. So back, well, in earlier times we did a lot of one-time analytics, but now we're more and more developing real data products, real software, which run automatically, maybe in real time, maybe in a certain time interval, and which give answer on a constant level. And yeah, now you must imagine that we not only have three questions, but we have a whole bunch of them. So in my team where I'm working, we are, for example, having, I think, over 100 applications which answer questions for different business units, which have to be maintained if some job is not running correctly. And in order to make this scale, we started building AI platforms some time ago. And on this platform, this AI platform, all those different products run and are maintained, and I have the chance to be part of it and building these platforms. So this was only a small insight, but I hope you can now understand why I consider data science really the most interesting job in the world. It's constantly developing, constantly evolving. I think currently we are really evolving in the direction of software engineering, of building real software, and I'm really curious what the future brings. And this means for myself actually that I also always had to develop myself to keep up with new technologies. After my mathematics studies, I did a lot of web courses and trainings to actually learn about the different algorithms and their coding in Python. And I did this in my spare time. So this was normal back then, I think. This was the way to go. But actually, I would have wished that my company proactively had shown me web trainings and supported me in this process. And that's why I feel, I think it's amazing actually that today with Beyond and Stackable at Telefónica, we as employees have really get the opportunity to integrate constant learning in our work. And I'm happy to hear from Christian more about it. Thank you.
So hi everybody here in BASECAMP and as well as in our virtual room. So guys, as we know, our world is changing and megatrends influence the way we work and the way we live. We have megatrends like digitalization, innovation and so on that affect our everyday lives and how we live and how we work. And if we take a look at the private side, we tend to be very able to change very fast. So maybe one example, even my grandmother at the age of 82 is nowadays using Sparkasse mobile banking app in the app in order to do her banking. I mean, of course, it's still Sparkasse and no direct bank because there is still somebody I can talk to at Sparkasse Alexanderplatz Berlin if something goes wrong, but at least she's using the mobile banking. If we have a look into our daily working lives, we tend to be a bit harder in regards to change. What do I mean by that? Like people do work oftentimes more than 10, 15, 20 years on their same position, doing the same job in the same way they are used to be. And if something new happens or if some change happens, they tend to be a bit harder. Like if I used my, let's say, Excel file for the last 15 or 20 years, and now there is a new software coming which is introduced, which helped me a lot, but the persons think that it's kind of hard to get away from the Excel file, which was happening very good and very successful for the last 15, 20 years. So it's kind of, we tend to be a bit harder to change in our everyday working lives. We as Telefónica expect that this kind of doing 20 years the same job in the same way won't happen nowadays and even in the future, because digitalization and innovation and other megatrends change the way we work dramatically and change our job profiles dramatically. So maybe one example in regards to that. If we look at the Telefónica customer service agent 15 years ago, his job was maybe kind of something like that. He answered the phone and there was a customer complaining about the fact that 3 weeks ago he signed a contract, but he still haven't received his SIM card. So what did the customer service agent did? He looked it up in the system and told them, hey, we just shipped it, we'll be with you in the next 3 days. If you look at the customer service agent job today, all of these questions in regards to SIM cards and so on will be even available through a self-service via Mein O2 app, or you have the opportunity to get the information based on our chatbot at the O2 homepage. So what is the customer service agent doing nowadays? He uses the time with our customer in order to consult him and to further cross and upsell our products. These are totally different skill sets you need, right? So based on the experience you've had before compared to what you're doing today, you need a total different skill set. You need to be able to do sales for especially today. And people have to learn that. And we believe as a company that in order to be successful for every employee, for every individual, as well as for the whole company, we need to constantly change and develop. And this is one of the reasons why we introduced our Beyond program by the beginning of 2020. What do we mean by Beyond? Beyond in this step means to go one step further. So a single person, a single employee is not only like his current job or his current skill set or something like this, but a single employee can do a lot of things more than he's actually doing within his current job. So we want to give the employees the opportunity to explore all the opportunities we have within Telefónica. So what did we do? We implemented a system which was delivered by our virus startup Co-Brainer, where every employee of Telefónica has the opportunity to create his own skill profile based on a CV or a LinkedIn profile or something like that. So he's basically entering all of his skills he knows and of course all of his interests. And what the system is doing is it's an AI in the system that's basically giving you recommendations for open jobs, for open training courses, for open job rotations, and for open projects that are running. What do we want to get by that? We want to help our employees to get easier access to open development options, whether it's another job, whether it's another project, whether it's another training. So we want to give our employees the option to develop, to continuously develop, and therefore develop for us as a company. We believe that people learn best when making experiences. So that's why we introduced the Beyond program. And now we go one step further to extend that program with our new learning journeys. And as I tell you all that, I recognize what an amazing employer Telefónica is. So if you're interested to work for us, just reach out. But now back to the topic. As I tell you, we asked ourselves, what are some of the key skills that we as Telefónica need for the future? And not only what is one specific business areas need for the future, but also what are the skills every Telefónica employee should have. And what we did is, we did a kind of research analysis across all business areas within Telefónica. So within technology, B2C, B2B, HR, finance, corporate functions, communications, and so on. And tried to find out what are the main skills we need to have at Telefónica in order to be successful for the future. Thereby, we identified 3 skill clusters, which is first, business basics and organization, where you put under something like business acumen, so how is your everyday job affecting our P&L. The second one is customer and user experience. I think it's clear what's behind that. And the third one is digital and data, with data science, analytics, automation, and cloud. And we wanted to start some learning journeys for our employees in regards to these 3 fields. But of course, we can't do anything at the same time because it's a little bit too much. So we need to focus on one specific. And what we've done is we asked our business areas again on what's the most urgent skill needed across all business areas. And the result is, what a surprise, data science and analytics. So I guess it's a coincidence that this meeting is in regards to data science and analytics. So what we wanted to do is train every employee within the company on data science and analytics. So we decided to build a data science learning journey which is open for everyone. That doesn't mean, of course, that everybody has to become a data scientist like Laura is. That's not the goal. But everybody should be able to understand data, understand what makes data in your current job and how you can use data in your current job. For example, if we're coming from HR, so we basically have nothing to do with data, you think. But if I look into my team, which is recruiting for all the open positions, for example, then we have some job advertisements we are placing on Stepstone and so on. We're paying a lot of money for that. And I want to know what's coming back. So I invest money and I want to know how many applicants do I get from my job requisition on Stepstone? How many good applicants do I get? How many hires do I get? Because I need to compare this to other initiatives, because maybe it's more effective to take this money, pay that a person who's going to Humboldt University and talking to some students who will nearly finish their exams and they will work for us. So I need to know what's coming out of my input. So their data is very relevant also for HR. And I can give a lot of examples that data is, of course, not only relevant for data guys, but also for all other areas. So everybody should be able to understand data, understand the meaning, how to handle data, and how I can use data in my everyday business life in order to be goal-orientated with my job. There must also be a reason for the fact that insight-driven businesses grow on an average of 30% each year. What do insight-driven businesses do? They collect data, generate knowledge, and gain advantage of that data in order to increase revenue. So what we did is we built learning journeys based on the newly introduced comprehensive data training by our partner StackFuel. And these courses train all of our employees the data skills of tomorrow. What's really important with that is, as I already mentioned, we want to give all of our employees the opportunity to take these data trainings. And there are, of course, different starting points. So if you compare myself to Laura, Laura is a data scientist. She knows nearly everything about data, and I'm a totally newbie. So what are we going to do? We're going to do different starting points for our learning journey so that everybody, whether you have experience with data or whether you have no experience with data, will be able to get some benefit from this course. And what's really great is that the StackFuel course is perfectly fitting into our idea of this journey, as it offers basic knowledge that helps you to, let's say, collaborate with some data scientists. So that helps myself in order to speak to Laura. So if she talks to me, that I can understand what she's saying about data. But then also going forward in the journey, you will learn how to create your own data analysis and how to program your data models in order to enable forecasts. So all in all, it's very important to have these different levels, and it's perfectly that we found with our corporate Vira initiative, our StackFuel partner, that perfectly fits into this idea of implementing trainings along our data science learning journey. Along the journey, we're not only using the StackFuel courses, but we further develop or implement the StackFuel courses together with some LinkedIn Learning courses, and also with some expert trainings from our own Telefónica DDC, so Digital Data Competence Center, experts who shown our employees the possibility of using Telefónica internal tools, and how we also use it nowadays at Telefónica. So all in all, we believe as a company that the more employees are empowered with data, the better it is. And from my opinion, it's a perfect benefit for all of the employees. And we believe that all of our employees, if all of our employees develop, we as a company will develop. And therefore, these StackFuel learning, data science learning journeys will be a perfect complement to our Beyond program. It's an awesome invest in our company. It's an awesome invest into our employees, and therefore an awesome invest in our company. Thank you, StackFuel, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Christian and Laura, for sharing your amazing insights. If anyone in the audience or online has questions, you can always post them in the chat. But I think I will just start with a question myself, because I'm so interested. So these initiatives and the projects like these, if, for example, anyone who's listening wants to implement this in their company, they want to, change the company to be a data-driven one, like Telefónica is doing it already, which department would you recommend to be the main driver of this change?
Mm-hmm. So I guess the obvious point is to answer it like the data department is the right point to address. But as I said, I mean, data is in everybody's daily business job. So whether you're from HR, whether you're from finance, you're from B2B, B2C, communications, and so on. I mean, you use data in every department and in every job. So I guess it would be a great starting point, of course, to focus on the data department, if you have one, because there are the experts. They can tell you on how they develop their knowledge. They can tell you on how they develop their solutions. And I guess, I would recommend to start with this point, but to also look at specific use cases where you need to use data in order to improve your daily business and in order to improve your product, your business, your consulting services. And I guess in every department you will find suitable use cases to start with. And I guess better start sooner than later.
Okay, amazing. Thank you for your insights. Let me just check if there are any more questions in the chat. No, right now there are no more questions. So thank you so much, Christian and Laura, online in our hybrid event. And I would hand over to Maike to introduce our third speaker of today.
Yeah, thank you, Isabel. If there's questions coming up, or if they come to your mind, you can always post them in the chat, and we can answer them at the end. But right now, I'm very happy to announce our third and next special guest, who is joining us online from Regensburg, Philipp Ramin. He is the CEO and founder of the German Innovation Center for Industry 4.0. Within the last 5 years, he has been building and developing digital competence for and with employees of different companies in over 14 countries. He's pushing the digital transformation on an international level, and we're looking forward to his insights about how digital competence among employees plays out as a competitive advantage. Without further ado, Philipp, I'm handing over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for your kind introduction. It's my great pleasure to be part of that of the web event. So the best regards from Regensburg to the world. My name is Philipp, and I have the pleasure to provide a few insights from our experience actually when it comes to building up digital competence. So let me share a few slides with you, what we have learned in our journey when we're working together with international companies building digital competence. So just give me a second, and here we go. Hopefully you're on the screen. Yeah, I want to talk about digital competence development among employees and managers. And this is somehow a strange topic because if you visit exhibitions, if you attend workshops, if you talk to people, and if you have a look at the, the well-made marketing brochures, then you might get the feeling that everyone is so digital. Everything is just awesome. We are working on the next big thing, and everything is just great. People are working with new work, and we have all a digital mindset. And someone needs to do something with AI. Doesn't matter what, but we need to cover the topic, of course. And then, of course, we need to have some sort of startup stuff because it's also very fancy to have something with startups. And of course, everything is very agile and very disruptive. So this is the way, if you go on LinkedIn, if you go online, what you will read and see and how the world is look like. Yeah? In particular, how also German companies tend to position themselves. And this is somehow strange because if you go into companies, if you talk to the people, then you might find a different reality to some extent. You might find a reality where actually, companies don't have really a plan when it comes to digitalization, and in particular when it comes to ordinary normal people who are not part of the digital office, who are not working on a digital project, are somehow not really involved into this transformation efforts. And I want to quote here a few points. This is on the left hand side here, you see results from Capgemini of all the organizations, for instance, in the Industry 4.0 context that have a smart factory initiative. Nearly 60% say that their initiatives are either struggling or that it's too early to comment. 60%. And only 14% say that would characterize the smart factory deployment so far as a success. There is even numbers from the US that only 5% of US manufacturers have achieved a real smart factory, for instance. So what can we learn? There seems to be some gap. There seems to be a gap between what we read and how companies tend to position themselves on the one hand, and on the other hand, there is some sort of different reality when it comes to digital competence. And this is what I want to discuss with you, because I'm convinced that at the end, when we really want to get the job done, when we really want to push towards digitalization, when we want to work towards really data-driven business models, we need to understand the rules of the game. And when I refer to we, I really say all of us. And I was also very happy to hear now in the speech from the colleagues of Telefónica to hear that they obviously seem to have an approach where everyone is involved and where it's not just a topic of IT or data, it's really a topic of the whole organization. The problem is that when it comes to digital change, actually, we sometimes have not really understood what makes people to accept digital change. Yeah, and we need to know that acceptance of digital change, first of all, is really influenced by the ability to change. So the first point, what we really need to understand, what makes people to be able to change. And actually, it's not so difficult because, first of all, people need to understand what is going on. So what does data science actually mean? What does Industry 4.0 mean? And how will that affect me in my professional career, in my development, in my daily tasks, for instance? So the first step of a digital transformation journey, and also the first step of thinking about future competitive, is really understand what is the soul of digital change. And here we have the ability to change and the willingness to change. And when it comes to digital competence, we are here on the left-hand side. We need to make sure that everyone in the organization is really able to understand what is going on and has the right tools to really provide the future tasks. That sounds easy. But unfortunately, if we have a look on, for instance, what the World Economic Forum is forecasting regarding competence profiles of the future, then we need to say, well, a big wave is really approaching us. Let's have a look on the left-hand side here in the gray box. The World Economic Forum is forecasting that there will be an increase in importance of, specific skill profiles. Number one, analytical thinking, active learning, and creativity, technology design. And of course, there's also something about data, but what we also see is it's also a lot about the non-technological factors, where we see an increase in importance. And that really makes sense because if we see how much artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning is increasing in importance, then of course, what makes us different between the machines, it's really human skills like creativity or learning, problem solving. But on the other hand, the question is also, how do we actually learn to learn? How do we actually learn to solve problems? How do we actually learn to be creative? Isn't that tricky? And who would have expected that on such a list, these kinds of competence profiles will be? And on the other hand, decreasing importance. Let's have a look. Number one, manual dexterity. Number two, spatial abilities. Number three, all kinds of administration, on finance, on material resources. Even number four, technology installation maintenance. Isn't that interesting? Even number five sounds a little bit strange. Reading, writing, math, active listening, decreasing importance. Does that make sense? Well, yes and no. Of course, I think we need to read and write. We need to understand math in order to do data science, in order to work on the next, algorithm for sure. But on the other hand, if more and more algorithms take over, if we get more and more assistant systems, then of course these kinds of competence profiles are indeed shifting. So what I want to say is we really need to understand the soul of digitalization, and we need to understand very much more detailed what is actually digital competence and how is it affecting us. The problem is that from our perspective, most of the organizations have not really a clue what digital competence means, because what we try to do is we try to listen to the digital evangelists, to the digital evangelists standing on stage and telling us, you need to do this and that, and it's exactly these 5 top skills which is important for everyone, and every organization needs this kind of business character, and these are the 5 meta skills. And of course, there is some truth behind, but I think it's way more important to break it down, to make it more concrete. What does it mean for a well-experienced machine operator to apply data science, or to understand programming, or to understand working in an agile business environment? What does it mean for a purchaser? What does it mean for someone in finance or administration? So I think we really need to stop discussing on a very generic theoretical level, but instead to really understand what is digital competence and how can we build digital competence systematically, and also how can we measure it. And at that point, I want to introduce you a consideration. A consideration, first of all, we need to understand that we try to define something that is constantly moving. So on that picture, you see on the, from the top to the down, the development over the course of the time, from the medieval times to today. And what you see here with each of these little axes is actually the amount of new tasks we need to understand in our professional career. And if you think about traditional craftsmanship several hundred years ago, it was a little bit like this, that there was maybe 1 new task or two new tasks over the whole professional career. And we know how the story continued. Over the course of time, more often we need to adapt to new activities because our business environment is changing so frequently. But this is not the end of the game, because digital transformation started to become a matter of fact. And therefore, it's not only, the amount of tasks in our regular job, it's also another dimension, the digital competence dimension, in which we need to ask ourselves, okay, how is it affecting my job? How is it affecting the amount of tasks and the kind of tasks I need to solve as a person? Therefore, let's find out how we can actually, how can we measure and define something that is constantly moving? And the problem is, and maybe you agree to that, in 5 years, we might have a different definition on digital competence than today. And maybe today we do have a different definition on digital competence than 5 years ago, right? So what we have done, actually, we are saying that basically our starting point is the competence as such. We need to develop competence in order to solve problems in the digital age. So it's not like there is something completely, from a different space. No, we are in the digital age, and we need to find out what are the tasks, what are the skills we need in order to solve these ongoing challenges. And to do so, we need to understand that this is not only a question of hard skills, it's also a question of cognitive ability. It's also a question of motivation, of volition, of social readiness. And I think many qualification projects are failing because we are too much focusing only on the very narrow perspective on hard skills, and we forget about the question, why should someone actually move? Why should be someone committed to a change? If we argue with KPIs such as we need to decrease costs, we need to become more efficient, and all of that is very professional and true, but on a very individual level, it's not really motivating people, or not always. So how can we twist it? We can twist it like this. We should not say that digital competence is exactly this, but we should look from the other angle. We should say, let's understand how the nature of work is shifting in the future. What kind of tasks will arise for an employee in the purchasing department, for someone in the sales, for someone in human resources? Because once we have understood how the nature of tasks will look like, we can then backcast what does it mean for the skills very precisely in that area. And then we can analyze what kind of personal factor and what kind of organizational factors do we actually need. Because don't forget, if we talk about learning, if we talk about continuous learning, this requires a real culture, a real learning culture in the company. And to be honest, I don't know what's your experience. Many companies are claiming, oh, we are such a learning company. But in reality, if you calculate that in Germany, 1.8 days on average are invested in, training and development, then we need to say, no, we are really at the beginning in this journey. Most of the companies are not really learning companies, are not really having a learning culture. Additionally, I think also when it comes to data science, it's a very good example. And I think Stackfuel, for instance, is here also providing some good considerations. It doesn't make sense to have only one journey, one learning journey. We need to differentiate that more detailed. And we need to understand that the starting point of the consideration is actually the question, how does our future strategy look like? How does the future strategy look like? Because this is the starting point. For instance, if we want to become a platform company, then we can break it down. If we want to become a platform company, the tasks in the different business units will change. That in turn means that also the tasks in different departments will change. And that in turn will also affect the question on how we design and define specific jobs or even roles. So at the end, when we talk about digital competence, it will not be enough to have an overall competence architecture where only 5 or 10 competences are defined, because the amplitude and the detailness of competence will differ a lot between employee group 1, between employee group B, or employee group C, for instance. To give you an example, if we take the example of e-commerce, company doing e-commerce, and now we want to build up digital competence, and maybe we take the example of data science here as an example, then there might be on the expert track the e-commerce data analyst. But just imagine if the data analyst expert is the one who should solve all the problems, he will have a very lonely job, because he is so much dependent on data quality, on people feeding this person with well-done data from the different areas of the company. So that means we need to have different personas. We also need to build up the digital competence in the management track and maybe in the associate track, maybe not on the same level, maybe not with the same details. But it is very important to understand that different learning paths will be required in order to get this data literacy, what we want to build up. And to be honest, this is not only applicable for data science. And we should also highlight, I know the data science is very important, and also for this meetup today, but please, don't forget there are many other digital competences which are equally important. And in particular, also when it comes to soft competences, we do pretty much see the same. Also here, we need to differentiate which group requires what kind of competence profiles. So what does that mean? It basically means we can use this also for business. And here I've prepared an example for you. So this is an example from the industry. Yeah? In the industry, the condition monitoring at the moment plays an important role. We want to find out how long machines are working. We want to find out what is the best way to run a machine, to run equipment. So what does this have to do with digital competence? Well, behind such a use case of condition monitoring, we need to understand there's a big portion of hardware, because before we can utilize data, there needs to be something that is actually collecting the data. So sensor technology, labeling technology. Then, of course, we need to have also the right software in order to process the data, in order to structure unstructured data, for instance. So people need to understand what does the process of such a software process look like? Yeah? How can we use the software? How can I visualize data, for instance? On the other hand, people need to understand for what are we actually doing condition monitoring? So what is the business dimension? How will this affect the business? How will that affect human resources? What kind of technology do we need? And therefore, I think it is very important, if we are going towards digitalization, to really break down, if we want to be the leader in condition monitoring, that we synchronize this technological target with a target of digital competence in the specific areas. Because this is really required in order to make it happen. People really need to understand what is going on here in different dimensions. And if we really want to kick out, the consultants one day, then we need to make sure that everyone in the company is able to do it on their own. I think this is a very important point, because too much of the digital projects are still done today externally with the help of external service providers. And I think this is wrong. And this is also one reason why German companies suffer here a lot, because they are really dependent in many cases on external consultants. They don't have the digital competence on a sufficient level in-house so far. Of course, there are brilliant other examples, but on average, it's what we need to observe at the moment. All right, so what does it now mean? What you see here is some exemplary learning or competence architecture. Yeah, and the starting point is actually to build a common language. That sounds a little bit weird, does it? Well, it's not weird, because just go to the cafeteria in your company, and maybe you're not working in a startup company, and maybe you're in a non-digital industry. Then do me a favor, make a test. Ask your colleagues what does big data actually mean, and how can data science be applied, and what is a cyber physical system, and what is actually a disruptive innovation. And most probably you will get a lot of superficial answers from different directions and very different opinions. So what I want to say is, the first starting point is we need to align. We need to be aligned in the company. We need to synchronize also our language. And this is only be possible if people have a common understanding about the topic. So what we recommend usually is to start training programs with a fundamental level, so that everyone in a huge organization consisting of 50, 60, 80,000 people are really applying the concepts in a similar way. After this is done, then the digital competence needs to be synchronized with the strategy of the company. Because from that synchronization, we can then deviate what kinds of competence fields do we need, do we cover? Yeah. So in which direction should HR really provide digital competence measures? And once we have the competence fields, then we can go one level up. We can talk about which methods do we need to understand. And once we understand the methods, then we can learn in particular the specific tools. And this is really a tricky task. It's really a tricky task because these kinds of learning architectures, they need to be built for different areas in the company. Yeah, the learning architecture of the ones in the human resources department, and they really also need a lot of digital competence as well, will look differently to the digital competence framework in manufacturing, for instance, or in the controlling department. So let's be a little bit more systematic. Let's stop the buzzword bingo and let's be more concrete when it comes to the digital competence development. And actually, I want to go one step further. I know it's a radical paradigm shift, but I'm really convinced that we need to have a new philosophy when it comes to human resources and to career development. Let's please stop to think about career paths. Yeah, this is the traditional way of thinking. There's a person has a career, and there's an organization, and the organization is providing career models. This is outdated, and this is limiting us so much, and this is limiting the individuals so much in their personal development. From our experience, it makes much more sense to think in terms of learning paths and learning models. And this is for us the centerpiece to really build up a learning culture and to really foster lifelong learning instead of only having a little bit of training here, a one-day workshop here. I mean, that's good. That's a good starting point. But indeed, this has nothing to do with real lifelong learning, yeah, to be honest. So that's a paradigm shift. And this is maybe something for long term. But if we make it really concrete, then, of course, we will have a different philosophy about personal goals. Yeah, we can think about voluntary versus obligatory. We can think about what kind of learning mode fits the best to the different individuals. And I'm a big fan of digital learning. At the same time, I'm also providing traditional training still, yeah, because we have experienced that some topics are hardly to be implemented with only e-learning. So I think in many cases, it could also be some blended approach. Yeah. And at the end, the learning mode is only the final point of the journey. First of all, we need to understand what needs to be learned, to what extent do we have different learning types, how does the learning model look like, the learning paths, and so on and so forth. I have a question for you. Yeah, and maybe some of you have already seen one of my speeches, and I usually use this number quite often. Unfortunately, we cannot interact at the moment, but you see here 101. And I can tell you the 101 doesn't stand now for some sort of binary code. The 101 comes from this study I have already quoted from the World Economic Forum, because this is the amount of days. This is the amount of days of additional learning until 2020. Every one of us need to invest additional to the day-to-day learning activities. So what does it mean? It really means that learning needs to become a core activity, not just a soft factor. Not just if we have a little bit budget left at the end of the year, then okay, let's do a half-day workshop. Learning needs to become a core activity. Otherwise, it will be very hard to keep pace with the developments, with the technological developments, with the global developments. And therefore, I'm really glad that World Economic Forum has calculated the number. Of course, it's an average, but still it provides a direction. Last but not least, so how can we use digital competence for a competitive edge? Well, first of all, I think it's very important that there is not a gap between human resources and the strategy. Yeah? Too often I see that human resources is too much isolated from the strategic orientation. So therefore, our experience says, translate the digital strategy into specific tasks company-wide. So what does it mean to become a platform? What does it mean to become a leading service provider? And what kind of tasks can be deviated? Second step, develop a holistic competence and learning architecture. A learning architecture over all hierarchies in all departments, in all business units. And last but not least, and this is the target is indeed not having the great digital competence. The digital competence is only a measure to achieve innovation. This is something we should never forget. It's great if we can say, we are so digital, we have so much digital competence, but eventually the digital competence needs to be translated into innovation, whatever this means from a product or service perspective. All right, that's it with my explanations. Just a few words about ourselves. My name is Philipp. I'm the CEO of the German Innovation Center for Industry 4.0. We are one of the leading training and e-learning providers on digital competence, currently doing business in 14 different companies in Europe and Asia. And if you want to join us, and if you want to join the companies who are already on our list, feel free to contact us. It was my great pleasure. And now I'm really looking forward to discuss with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Philipp, for sharing these approaches and experiences. Now we have time for some questions. I'll check with the chat. Okay, so we have a question. Philipp, what are the first steps a company needs to take to become more data-driven in your point of view?
It's pretty much the same story I've already mentioned. First of all, I need to answer, why do I want to become data-driven? So what is the purpose for becoming data-driven? I guess there is some strategic plan. So we want to achieve something strategically. And because we want to achieve that, in the different departments need to achieve a specific level of data literacy. So for instance, purchasing of the future, it's not necessary anymore that you do the negotiating about 2 cents more or less, but you will have software, you will have data, and based on this data, you will have micro contracts between your service providers, for instance. So therefore, you have a clear understanding that the nature of your activities, of your task is changing, and therefore you want to build up digital competence. And then you can very concrete work into a specific direction and can help people to build up the digital competence. And then they also will understand, why do I actually need to change? So why should I mean, in the last 20 years, maybe people have done a specific task in a specific way. And now we are telling the people you need to become a data scientist. I mean, it's okay, but we need also to explain why and what is your role in this big picture and this big strategic picture. I think this is very important to synchronize that. And this is for me something, I cannot say whether it's the very first step, but it's the very first phase at least.
Okay, thank you very much. And one more question from my side. Which changes have you noticed regarding the digital transformation of businesses since the COVID-19 has changed all of our everyday lives?
Yes, absolutely. Things are going faster, and this is good. I think this is a lesson learned for all of us. Let's forget a little bit about the bureaucracy and about the standard process. If there is some pressure, we need to get the job done. And we see it's working. And I think we should not talk so much, but we should execute. Yeah, let's just do the things.
Thank you very much. We also have another question for Laura. Can we get Laura back on the screen? Perfect. So in the chat it says, someone is interested, what are the greatest challenges in providing services internally to teams that are trying to understand customer behaviors?
Okay, so what are the greatest challenges for the teams?
What are the greatest challenges
Yeah.
for you to provide services internally?
Okay. So actually, I always feel like I hear myself twice now. Can you change it? Okay. So for me, actually, it feels always like working in a startup a little bit, because it's always about creating a product and really understanding customer needs. And that's actually also the challenge, because customers always, or internal customers sometimes think already about how a certain question should be asked or even answered. But while we're working with them, sometimes we get to know that actually it's something completely different they try to do. So we always try to understand the whole picture of their process. What do they do before this question they're asking, and what do they want to do with the answer? So how are they going to work with this answer? Which tools are they using? What are the decisions they need to do afterwards? And actually that's, I think, the greatest challenge, to really understand the customer's need and speak the same language, because we are in our data world and we know how to model certain things, but we sometimes lack the knowledge of the business process. So it's always a constant learning also between those two parties. So in every project I do, I learn a little bit more how Telefónica and certain business units works.
Thank you, Laura. So I think that's it with the questions for today. I'm sure all our speakers are available for questions. You can reach out to them via LinkedIn afterwards. And now, last but not least, I'm going to announce our lucky winner of the day. Today at the office, we had a little raffle where we randomly selected a name from the attendee list. And this person will get a free license for our data analyst class, which is worth 3,000 euros. So the winner is Lorenz Honig, and congratulations, Lorenz. We will send you an email with the information you need to sign up for the training and to become maybe a data analyst. Be nice to hear your story. Thanks everyone from my side. Isabel, I'm handing over to you for one last time.
Thank you so much, Maike. So to close this event, we want to thank all the amazing speakers once more for sharing your insights, your expertise, and your projects and stories with us. It was very insightful, and we thank you so much for your time. Also, we want to thank BASECAMP, Telefónica, and the Innovation Center 4.0 for contributing to this meetup today. And of course, we want to thank all of the listeners here and online, so for contributing to the meetup and learning more about corporate data science education with us. Congratulations to the lucky winner of the data analyst course. We hope you use it well. And if you want to join us for future meetups and events, we encourage you to join our meetup group, which you can find and join at meetup.com/learndatascienceberlin. And with that being said, we're looking forward to seeing you at the next meetup, at the next event, and wish you a great rest of your week.